It's 5 o'clock and it's martini time. I went to Costco this afternoon and got a jar of olives stuffed with garlic, and it works pretty good in a martini. So it's okay to experiment. I feel compelled to talk to you today about something that's dear to me, and I always get into trouble when I try to explain this because, well, I want to talk about the Eucharist, and it's very sacred to many people, and I don't know, you may be religious or not religious or in between. So what I'm going to say, I don't mean to say what your belief is wrong or anything. I just want to explain how I see the Eucharist from my point of view is through a martini. So, so when I said I was a martini priest, and the martini, as my uncle ordained me to this, and the martini is a metaphor for the Eucharist. It doesn't mean that Jesus was drinking gin. It means it's a metaphor. So I wanted to go into what this, how this works, and to make it a living, something that's living, instead of something that refers to the past. So when it's martini time, what I'm really saying is that this is a timeless moment where we can meet here and have a process of discovery and a little joy, a little humor. So I noticed that when we have communion in church, that it's always a reference, particularly in the Protestant tradition, it's always a reference to the past. So on the table there, where the bread and the wine, or in this case, the grape juice and the crackers are, there's always in remembrance of me, in remembrance of me. So the whole tradition, the whole ritual is a reference to the past and a remembrance. Well, in my tradition, the past is dead. The past is rising up out of our mind right now. It's not. There is no back there. When I remember the past, I'm now remembering the past. So I'm always now. So I can't get to the past. So if I reference anything to the past, I'm avoiding now. So how do we get the ritual or the Eucharist as something that's living in the present? And the Eucharist means sacred. So the real question is, how do we find the sacred in the present moment? You can't find the sacred in the present moment by referring it to the past or to some scripture or something. It has to be now. So we all experience the sacred in ways. If we go to a cemetery and give flowers on the grave of a loved one or a battleground, that feels sacred. There's a feeling to the sacred. It's not an intellectual concept. It's not a memory. It's an actual feeling of the present moment. So when we access the present moment that is not filtered by memory, that's the feeling of the sacred. But since everything is filtered through mind and me and memory, and everything references the past or the future, we can't find the sacred now. Because everything that we experience now is being referenced to the past or the future. And that's our memory, and that's our imagination. So I imagine the past, I imagine the future, and I reference the sacred to that, so I can't find it. See, so it's always here. So let's take some common examples of where people experience. The sacred is subjective, it's not objective. You can't see the sacred, you have to feel it. So the sacred is subjective. So many people feel the sacred, but they don't call it that. People in battle feel the sacred because they're totally in the present moment. People that go to extreme sports feel that's sacred because it puts them in totally, absolutely in the present moment. If you're a sky jumper, that's sacred because when you jump out of a plane, you're not referencing that jump to anything in the past or the future. It's just now. Or a roller coaster can be a feeling of the sacred when You don't think about your laundry when you're on a roller coaster. There's no reference to anything but the roller coaster. So we do these things in our modern life that gives us the feeling of the sacred, but we don't call it that, you see. So it is we could say it's a ritual where the doer, the doing, and the thing done are one. Now think about that again. And this is traditional in any religion. Religious rituals, when they are done properly, are the priest or the person doing the ritual, the actual thing they do, and the thing being done become one. So you are entirely in the present moment. And that creates the sacred. So this really gets down to the fact that the present moment, that reality is already sacred. And when we drop into it through some ritual that we enjoy, like our hobbies, working on a car, deer hunting, all of these activities that we do that makes us feel totally into the present moment, and we can leave the world beyond. It's like taking off our shoes to the world and leaving them out the door. And we enter into this moment where we are totally one with the moment. Sex is sacred in that sense. Everything that brings us totally present, we experience subjectively as being at one with reality. So reality is sacred, and when we feel at one with it, we're feeling the sacred. But in our culture, the sacred is only in a compartment, like in church, you see, or someplace special, where people tell you it's sacred, and you go there and I don't feel anything. Or you do to communion, which is supposed to be sacred, but it's just some grape juice and crackers. And everybody gets very pious and everything, but nobody feels anything. Some people do, but I mean, it's not, that's an objective thing where you're supposed to do that, you see. So the sacred is something that we love to do because it gives us a feeling of being at one with ourselves and with reality. So the sacred is when I, as a separate me, a separate thing, dissolves into the present moment, and I'm not here. After I get out of that particular situation or ritual, then I can reflect back and say, oh man, that was great. Now I want to tell everybody about it, and I can't wait to get back in there, you see. But that's getting back into time. So we're constantly living in time. Our culture is a time culture. It's a clock culture. Everything is made by thought and time and past and future orientated. Remember the past, get to the future. And we have these little places, our movies, our games, our sports, our wars, our sex, all these places are where we engage and enter into the sacred, but we don't call it that. Because in our culture, the sacred really doesn't exist except in the future, or the past. So nobody knows how to get to it. Everything is just stuff and material, and it's all reference to my memory and me in the past and the future. So think about that now. So when I say like a martini, I'm say the martini priest, and I'm having communion here, the Eucharist, so in this sense now. So don't get upset. So I am inviting you into the relationship with me in this timeless moment, you see, which is the sacred. So it's just a different way of looking at reality and ourselves, and to realize that the sacred is everywhere, but we have forgotten how to open the door to it. We lost the key. And that's because the sacred has been compartmentalized into a religious context and not into everyday context. So you see, in our culture, the religious is on Sunday morning, and the rest of the day is the world. You see, so there's two worlds here. And we've pressed the sacred into a tiny little place. And then when we go there, we're still thinking about the world. So we really haven't entered into the sacred. We're just pretending it's sacred. This is not for you, I'm sure, but I'm just saying this is a general observation. So anyway, this is your sacred message at this martini time, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.